We will be discussing the effect of suprasegmental features. This presentation is completed by Danny, Kelly,
Morgan,
and
Isabella.
Today we will be discussing suprasegmental features and the effect that they have on learning a new language. The purpose of this presentation is to discuss the challenges that can arise when Mandarin speakers attempt to learn the English language. We have chosen to discuss Mandarin Chinese and English because of the very different roles suprasegmental features play in each of these languages. Mandarin Chinese is considered a tonal language, meaning different tones can completely alter the meaning of the word. On the contrary, English is an intonation language. We specifically chose to focus on Mandarin speakers learning English as a second language and how suprasegmental features play a role in their understanding of the language because of this difference.
Suprasegmental features can be applied to a syllable, word, or even an entire utterance. Common suprasegmentals include stress, tone, intonation, and length, but for the purposes of this presentation, we will focus on stress, tone, and intonation. All languages integrate suprasegmentals, however, in some languages, the use of certain suprasegmentals is more sensitive. In the following slides, we will delve deeper into each individual suprasegmental feature.
The first suprasegmental feature that we will discuss is stress. Stress is defined as an increase of muscular energy used in order to have one word or syllable stand out from the rest. In our textbook, it states that stress is a property of entire syllables, not segments, though the syllable nucleus, usually a vowel, carries most of the information about stress. A stressed syllable is more prominent than an unstressed one due to a number of factors, one of them being that stressed syllables are longer and louder, and unstressed syllables usually contain full vowels. Stress is important to language because the relative emphasis of syllables within a word is not governed by a rule, but rather is a property of the word. This lexically defined stress can thus be used to recognize words. On this slide, you can see some examples of how stress can alter the meaning of a word. Stress is essential in understanding how an individual uses a specific word in the context of a sentence. When learning a second language, an individual originally only learns the dictionary definition of a word. Stress can complicate an individual's learning of a new language because they do not understand the syntactical rules behind a word and the different ways in which a single word can be used. A single word can belong to both syntactic categories, noun and verb, depending on where you place the stress marker within the word. For example, the word conflict can have a stress marker placed at the beginning of the word, conflict, and is therefore categorized as a noun. However, when the stress marker is placed in the middle of the word, conflict can be categorized as a verb.
A research study was conducted to determine if Mandarin speakers of American English are able to knowingly pronounce the difference between stressed and unstressed words. The researchers were able to determine the relationship by breaking down the features of stress. The results showed that native Mandarin speakers were able to correctly signal stress in sentences, but their acoustics differed. The Mandarin speakers produced stressed words with a much higher frequency compared to American native speakers. When studying why frequency itself changed because of stress, the researchers found that sentence stress in Mandarin is achieved through varying uses of frequency, making this the norm for people who speak Mandarin. For example, Mandarin speakers encounter difficulty determining the appropriate location for stress within an English sentence. Once they do locate the proper place, Mandarin speakers tend to intensify the stress in order to compensate for the difference in speech.
Our textbook defines tone as the pitch at which the syllable in a word is produced. Mandarin Chinese is referred to as a tone language, whereas English is known as a non-tonal language. Tonal languages, including Mandarin, have steady tones, high tones, mid-tones, and low tones that each convey different meanings. The chart on the slide is an example how the word ma can refer to 4 different things based on varying tones. For example, mother, hemp, horse, and scold. The numbers in the chart have to do with the tone level, and the tone patterns have to do with the high level, high rising, low falling, rising, and high falling. A study conducted by Carolyn Quam and Sarah C. Creel tested to see how native Mandarin speakers would react with varying levels of exposure to English, a non-tonal language. Results indicated that the more exposure a native Mandarin speaker had to English, the less able they were to recognize tone when reverting back to Mandarin. In a second study conducted by Tong et al., found that tone sensitivity in the native language translate to tone sensitivity in English. Overall, these studies suggest that tone discrimination has the ability to assist native Mandarin speakers who attempt to learn English.
The non-tonal language of English encourages native speakers to listen for variations in the height of pitch sounds. This distracts them from focusing on the direction and duration of the pitch, which encompasses the overall tone. This impacted the native English speakers' ability to correctly perceive foreign Mandarin tones. They listen for a change in higher or lower fundamental frequencies in Mandarin utterances, rather than the tonal language's intention of conveying meaning through the level and contour of the utterance. Native tonal language speakers, such as Thai and Mandarin speakers, had opposing difficulties in focusing more on the tone than on the pitch when learning the English language. This is likely due to the fact that English does not depend on lexical tones in the differentiation of lexical meanings. The language experience, shaped by a tonal language speaker's L1 phonological knowledge, affected their ability to correctly perceive pitch, which changes the meaning of an utterance in the English language or the L2.
Intonation is another suprasegmental property. Intonation is defined as a pattern of pitch movements across a stretch of speech, such as a sentence. It can also be described as a rise and fall of a voice in speaking. Intonation is not used to distinguish words, but rather used for a range of functions to indicate attitudes and emotions of the speakers, while also experiencing the difference between statements and questions and between the different types of questions. It helps to regulate conversational interaction. Intonation is said to be among the first aspects of speech that human infants attend to, react to, and produce themselves. It appears to be easily acquired by children in both L1 and L2, also known as first language and second language. The intonation contour of an utterance plays a role in determining its meaning. One might think of intonation as you and another person saying the same word, but with different intonation, leading it to mean something different than what the other person's meaning of the word meant. Intonation is not just a single classification of contours or outlines and levels. The interaction of these features come from many different systems such as tone, stress, pitch range, loudness, and rhythm. Non-native speakers' intonation similarly appears to be a key factor in native speaker listeners' misinterpretation or misunderstanding of information from the non-native speaker's speech. It was discovered that native-speaking Mandarins were shown to have nearly perfect scores for information in the uses of the English language.
Overall, Mandarin speakers are able to understand stress markers, but they pronounce it at a higher intensity. Tone discrimination translated to increased awareness of pitch in English. Mandarin speakers used their linguistic competence from their tonal language to understand intonation in English. Despite the fact that Mandarin is a tonal language and English is an intonation language, we found that ultimately this does not affect Mandarin speakers' ability to understand suprasegmental features in the English language.
Here is our works cited page. Thank you for listening.